Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I am the host and the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me, Ultiworld senior editor Keith Rayner on this Tuesday, January 13th. Beautiful summer day. I hope it's just fantastic wherever you are. And it's also a beautiful day because the Denver Nuggets won the NBA title last night over the Miami Heat. 4-1 in the series, Keith. And I will tell you, I had Denver -2.5 in the series and -1.5 in the series. A nice little payday yesterday. Lots of fun. And is it consensus Jokic number one on earth right now?
I think so. I mean, I was also holding that Nuggets -2.5 ticket, so I'm right there with you. And yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what he definitely is. Greatest NBA draft pick of all time right now.
That's a lock.
Undisputed.
That's a lock. I was trying to think when I was kind of watching Jokic play last night. You know, he kind of shuffles around the court and like doesn't really look like he is an athletic build. Not that I'm saying anything new or surprising, but I was trying to think about who is the comp in Ultimate to Jokic and like his physical style, where like he is insanely skilled, but doesn't look like he should be a great basketball player, or in the case of Ultimate, great Ultimate player. You already know.
I think the kids have a term for this, Charlie. And maybe the kids will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm on TikTok enough to know they call it a sleeper build.
Sleeper build. I've never heard that. Okay. It's the first right here.
I'm gonna teach you. This is what I get for coaching college. I learned pick up stuff like this.
So who has a sleeper build in Ultimate?
Okay, the first person I thought of is Nut. I know it's the direct Jokic to Nut comp isn't quite there.
Yeah,
but I would not be like, wow, this is one of the best Ultimate players in the world. And then the guy just dominates with his skill.
But I mean, he's like pretty in shape. I feel like he looks like he's an in shape guy.
Yeah, it doesn't look out of shape. It's hard to come up with an exact. Like Brian Jones, once upon a time, I think he coined the term standler. You know, that handler looks like they're not going to do anything; is just going to stand there. I don't know if that type really is thriving these days.
Yeah, not really. I'm racking my brain, but it's hard to come up with somebody because like the players who are not like ripped athlete, like skinny types, still look like athletes, like Mickle. There's got to be somebody out there. Somebody will email us and let us know, but it's a remarkable thing. And the guy just was like a vacuum on the glass last night. Like could not get a rebound.
The Heat were never a good matchup for Jokic. And congrats to the Nuggets. It's their first, right? So they're one of the few franchises that were left without a ring. Cool to see a first time champ. It's been a while since I feel like we've seen that in Ultimate.
Not so, Keith. What are you talking about? It's been a couple months. Molly Brown?
No, that's true. I guess that's Denver. Why did I make the Denver connection? There you go.
Lots of first time champs in Denver.
Does that make Valeria Cardenas the Jokic?
I don't think so.
She's got the vision. She's got that like game-breaking vision.
From a skill passing perspective, I'm with you. Yeah, Bronco Nation, let's ride. So off we go into today's show. We have some college awards to announce. Now, these all already come out on the website, but wanted to mention them here. Congratulations to the players of the year and the winners this year in the women's division. Alex Barnett from UNC wins player of the year. And on the men's division, Henry Ing from Pittsburgh. Keith, obviously fantastic players, both Callahan nominees for their teams this year. Had
both
great
finalists,
top to bottom seasons, both top 5 in the award. Yes. I think real credit, particularly to Alex Barnett, for standing out enough with her play to win, even though she has multiple teammates who are also in the conversation for this award. That's hard to do.
It is. It's something that has plagued many a deep title team before. We've certainly seen that, and it could have hurt Barnett, especially this year when votes were pretty spread out. I mean, there was definitely a number of worthy candidates, but Barnett stood out the most with her consistent level. I mean, she also, to her credit, she was on the podium last year, so that in some ways, that gives her potentially a leg up. Obviously, she finished behind her teammate Don Colton last year, but was on the podium. So that does seem to be the trick right now, because you got back-to-back North Carolina winners who were on the podium the year prior. So maybe that'll work for somebody else. But not this year. It was a lone North Carolina representative on the podium with Barnett, but a great winner. And for Ing, not quite capping off a great career. I think he has another year left. But it's really a tremendous player, and was number one in our top 25 players as well. And backed that up with his performance in the college season throughout the year, and gets one over on his brother, who had 2 runner-up finishes. But Henry's going to walk away with the actual crown.
Keith, were those 2 players your first place votes?
No, they were not both my first place votes. If you remember, Charlie, on this very show, I had a bold prediction, which some thought wasn't too bold, but I think I backed up my case, that Henry Ing would be the unanimous player of the year by the end of the year.
I can't imagine that happened.
1 vote.
Wow.
I got by 1 vote. There was one other person.
Did they go Dameron, the other person?
I think that they did go. I can't remember if they went Dameron or Nissen, but I think they went Dameron. No, actually, I think it was Nissen. I think it was Nissen who got one of their first place vote.
Nissen had a marvelous nationals. Had a really good season overall, but a really incredibly impressive nationals. Better than Henry's nationals for sure.
So close. I was so close to getting that bold prediction. But no, Barnett was second on my player of the year ballot.
Same here. I had McCarthy number 1. Kennedy McCarthy.
Me too.
Number 1.
Whoa, deep looks player of the year, Kennedy McCarthy, huh?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, look, it was impossible this year. Picking top, even all the way down to like the All-American second team, was impossible this year. Really, really hard. There were so many good players. Felt like it was picking between, equal options. So I think Barnett was well deserving number 1. That's why we have multiple voters. I think it works out great. I think, for me, McCarthy stood out more on a team where she was the centerpiece focal of the entire offense. And you could argue that about Barnett, but, with Youngst out there and Teresa Yu out there, I just feel like there were other players who were taking on a lot of load. That's not to knock Barnett in any way. I did have her number 2 on my ballot, but I thought McCarthy had kind of more of that like top level, give me the rock kind of takeover season.
Say just copy paste for me. Big same energy. But I definitely credit to Barnett. Like, we both had her second on our ballots, and the full ballots will be out for our subscribers as we get more out. The first team All-Americans are out, and I think by the time the show goes up, we're recording this Tuesday afternoon. By the time the show goes up, I'm pretty confident the second team.
Well, why don't you just go ahead and read off for us then the first and second team All-Americans? Let's give them a little shine.
All right, let me see here. So for our first team All-Americans, the list in the men's division is obviously Henry Ing, who's at the top of the first team. Top of the first team All-Americans, always going to be the player of the year. So Henry Ing, Jacques Nissen, and Ben Dameron. Those are identified as our player of the year runner-ups in that order. So Nissen first runner-up and Dameron second runner-up. And then the rest of the players are just first team All-Americans as is. Itai Chang from Oregon, Leo Gordon from Brown, Wyatt Kellman from UMass, and Rutledge Smith from UNC. The second teamers in the men's division, Calvin Brown from Cal Poly SLO, Dexter Clyburn, Cal, Luca Harwood, UMass, Danny Landisman from Colorado, Anton Orm from SLO, Kevin Pignone from North Carolina, and Johnny Sickles from Vermont. That is your men's first and second team. In the women's division, like we mentioned, Barnett getting the top spot as the player of the year. First player of the year runner-up, Abby Hecko out of Washington, and Kennedy McCarthy is the second runner-up. The rest of the All-American first team, Esther Philippek from Stanford, Ella Youngst, North Carolina, Mika Kurahashi from UBC, and Bailey Shigley from Colorado. What a comeback story for Bailey Shigley. That's a particularly fun one for me. I haven't been such a big fan of her from her freshman year after she missed out with injury.
Yeah, for her to be the only Colorado player on the top list shows you what a good year she had, and particularly in nationals.
Well, get ready for more Colorado on this on this second team. But we can start with the champs. Dawn Colton from UNC, Stacey Gaskill from Colorado, Julia Hasbrook from UC Santa Barbara, Madison Ong, UBC, Hazel Ostrowski, Tufts, Clill Phillips, Colorado, and Devin Quinn from Santa Barbara. So a pair of Santa Barbara players, 2 UBC players in the list as well, and 3 UNC and 3 Colorado overall across the top 14.
There you go. It was so tough. Like,
it was so hard.
Like players like Clara Stewart and like Quincy Booth, like high volume players were in consideration. I can't remember where I ended up having those. I think I had them both on my third team, but there's like a bunch of other players who are arguable second teamers that didn't make the second team because there's simply only 14 spots in those top 2 teams. So really tough this year, but well deserved. I mean, how about Esther Philippek and just the run that Stanford had this year? Amazing. I feel like me in particular, but in some ways both of us, way too dismissive of this Stanford team early in the season. We're just wrong. We were just wrong about them.
Valuable lesson. never doubt Superfly. It's just, you just have to assume that they're going to be, a top 10 level team, I think.
Really just it was a great nationals. It was a great season, and more awards to come as we get into our offensive and defensive player of the years and all that good stuff. So
I think maybe not this show, but maybe next week we'll do, as all the awards come out, we'll talk some snubs and some of our picks and on the subscriber segment or something. We'll see.
I like it. Okay. So we're going to get ready now for, it's a busy weekend in Ultimate Frisbee. Let me tell you that. Of course, the AUDL is rolling on. We also have the PUL Championship Weekend. We also have the High School National Invite. So we got a lot to get to. We're going to start with PUL Championship Weekend. The 4 teams are set as they were last week, as we, of course, discussed the decision from the rankings committee to pick New York over Philadelphia. Your seeding for Championship Weekend: number 1 overall seed, DC Shadow. Number 2, Minnesota. Number 3, New York. And number 4, Raleigh. That means that DC will face Raleigh in the semifinals, and Minnesota will face New York. Winners will meet on Sunday afternoon in the final to decide who's going to win the 2023 PUL Championship. Keith, some intriguing matchups. We get the rematch of New York and Minnesota. Minnesota beating New York by 1 during the season. DC played Raleigh in Raleigh, beat them by 3 during the season. So a couple of rematches. Do you see similar outcomes this time around, or do you think that we should expect something a little bit different?
The $1 million question really is about this gridlock team, right? Are we going to see what version of them are we going to see? Because have we seen the same? Does it feel like you've seen the same team in any 2 games this season? Not even from a personnel standpoint, but just from a play style standpoint. And right now, I feel like people feel like they're hot. People feel like that roster is coming together. They're figured some things out. They hopefully will have a fully fleshed out team, given that it's championship weekend. And all that leads to feeling like this is a different gridlock team than the one that lost to the Strike in that close matchup, I believe, in Minnesota. So, for all those reasons, I think that the gridlock really is going to be the favorite to beat out the Strike. And given that they have a head-to-head over the Shadow, I think in some ways you can mark the gridlock as a return to being the favorite. I mean, they were our preseason pick, And then that looked dead in the water. And now we're looking like we might be geniuses again. It's all coming up deep look.
It was all false flag last week, getting all mad about the New York getting in, because we actually orchestrated the entire thing.
If you squint at at the Gridlock logo, that GL, you can see a DL if you like really squint right there.
Gonna be really interesting. It's tough to go on the road. New York going on the road, losing close to Minnesota in their house. Now neutral site, probably going to be, I don't know how many New York fans will be there, but more than Minnesota fans, I would imagine. And given the way the Gridlock have been playing towards the end of the season, I do think you have to look at them as the favorite, just in terms of like the depth of their rosters. The top end of Minnesota is fantastic and could win them this game straight up. I think Minnesota is absolutely should be considered a challenger to win the entire thing. I think DC has an easier time with a Raleigh team that's been a little underpowered the whole season. And they're playing at home. They're going to have, I'm sure, a nice crowd. And that's going to be a tough environment for Raleigh to get a win in. But I'm excited for both games. And certainly whichever teams qualify will have earned it to get to the final. I think overall, DC playing at home, they have to be considered the slight favorites, given that they have the easier semifinal matchup and the home crowd advantage. That is not nothing.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think that, let's not forget with this DC, like you take away that New York game, where I maintain that, particularly in the second half, like something felt a little off about that team. They felt a little listless, and yes, that's a knock against them. Like that same energy could reappear if they get down. Like you don't want to see a team have those moments, but that didn't feel representative of who this team was. Prior to that, they had just been absolutely kicking ass and taking names. Like people have, I think, lost sight of just how good DC looked relative to the rest of the league until that New York game. Like I think that people are docking them a bit too much for that result.
Every team that went on the road took losses. Look, these are all great teams. Did Raleigh win all their road games? They might have, because I don't know that they had any like tough opponents on the road, but they came close. But
no, they lost one. They lost one road game. Although I don't know if it's actually a road game. Some of these road games are neutral site games, but
I guess, and I'm wrong, because Minnesota went undefeated. So, but they didn't play a tough road game. But New York played a tough road game. They had to go to Minnesota and Philly. They lost them both. DC had to play a tough road game. They had to go to New York. They lost. It's hard. It's hard to do the travel and then play the game. And now that challenge faces the teams that are coming to DC's house. It feels almost unfair that the best team gets to host championship weekend. But it is what it is.
You want to say that's it used to be that you just got to go to championship weekend for hosting.
Classic. But Atlanta's we designed the league, so we get to be in the playoffs. Nice.
But are they wrong? Are they wrong?
They were good. So. They played good. They played good in the playoffs.
Part of the conceit though with why it's hard to win in the road is because teams don't often travel with their best rosters. I don't know how much that's the case here in these matchups, but I think you kind of throw that out the window a little bit when it comes to championship weekend. Not to say that the rest of the travel components don't matter, but I think maybe you deaden that effect a little bit.
Sure. But it's still, DC players are going to sleep in their own beds, and they're going to have a normal routine in their day. They don't have to get in cars or on a bus and drive a long way and get stiff in the bus and then go to some hotel, and then someone pulls a fire alarm at 3 a.m. It's a harder experience to do that. That said, Keith, you have to, if you're just thinking about it from like a straight up matchups perspective, you have to like New York. You have to. They played their best game of the season against DC. So, you don't want to look ahead. If you're the Gridlock, you got to be prepared for that Minnesota game. Because it's not like Robin Fennig and crew are just going to lie down and be like, oh, well, we had a great undefeated regular season and now we're going to get knocked out. Wow, they're really good. What do you think? What do you think turns each of these semis matchups?
Ooh, from what we've seen of New York, I think that they're going to need to be able to go out there and punch in easy holds. Like that has not always been the case with them. I think they've been a gritty team that can win back and forth matchups, but they aren't able to. They aren't a team that just kind of bullies you ever. And I think that puts a little bit of pressure on their defense that their defense has often been able to respond to. But I think they'd be in a much better spot, and especially if you're thinking about trying to get through 2 games in 2 days, and a good team like Minnesota, you don't want to let them back into the game. So I think that could be a big difference maker for New York if they're going to get the win. And for Minnesota, we know what you're going to get from Robin Fennig and Sarah Maxtrock. They're going to put up numbers. They're going to be a handful for whoever they're going up against. I think it's going to be a lot about are they getting the kind of block getting performances they need from the rest of these players. Do they have players out there who are making plays down the roster? Is Danielle Byers and Jane Cook, are they out there making a difference against some of the potentially bigger name players? I'm a big fan of Rachel Johnson. Like, is she doing her job to apply pressure and then being effective with the disc in her hand? These kinds of questions I think are going to be the defining ones for the Strike overall.
Yeah, I think Gridlock's going to get breaks, so you got to be able to get your own breaks back if you want to win. So I think it's right that like the Minnesota D line's performance against the New York O line that's been up and down, to be honest, is probably going to decide that game. On the other side, I think for Raleigh and DC, I mean, look, DC is a pretty clear favorite. To me, probably a 4 or 5 point favorite in the game. Raleigh has changed the narrative there. I don't think they can match up on a talent perspective. They're not going to win by being just, out athleting DC. It's not happening. So tactically, they need to figure out, how do we take them out of what they want to do? How do we minimize the pain of, we can't let Claire Trope just get deep balls, with no contest. Like, force them to grind, force them to do stuff they don't want to do offensively, and hope it's enough to give yourself enough breaks. I think that the Raleigh O-line is probably going to struggle a little bit against the DC defense. But if they can turn it into kind of a rock fight game, I think they have a chance.
Well, I actually kind of see it the other way. As far as your conclusion, I think that they don't want to get into a rock fight, because that's where I think DC can kind of just outmuscle them. I think that for Raleigh, they want to make this a pristine game. Like, if they could be in this game with very few breaks, with a lot of offensive holds, like just clean offense, like let their system do a lot of the work. I think that's going to benefit them. And then just sneak in a couple breaks here and there, a couple wrinkles on defense, something to get a quick turn or two. Beat some hucks, or throw a junk zone that maybe get a poach block in a short field. Like, for me, I think if I'm Raleigh, I want to make this a really clean game that's all about execution and less about, okay, who's the more athletic team, who's going to be more difficult to match up 1 through 7. Like, I think that's where DC is going to have the advantage. I think if you're Raleigh, you want to make this all about being an execution-based team where they can let Cheetah Titcomb and Alex Barnett go to work and do their thing and be really effective around the end zone, rather than have to get into a foot race in a bully ball where DC that Claire Trope's going to be a trump card in that situation.
The interesting thing about this Raleigh team, when have we seen their full roster?
Don't know.
I mean, they've been missing players all season.
Yeah.
Some for injuries, some for people, out at something else. They also have a lot of UNC Pleiades players on their team. So many of their best players are just coming off of the college seasons, which means, number one, they haven't played that much. Number two, they're in great shape, and they are probably ready to step into big roles right away. Do not count Raleigh out. They are definitely capable of beating DC. It will be tough. They're not as deep. They don't have as much top end talent either, but there's still a lot of very good players on the team. And I think if they are able to put out, their best roster of the season, which I think is very possible, it's going to be a closer game than people anticipate.
Do you think they have a shot at winning?
No.
Okay. They're kind of the only team that I don't think I can see winning 2 of these games back to back. I think I can see them beating DC. I still think they're a pretty sizable dog, but I think they have the capability to win that. I don't know if I could see them winning 2 games against this level of competition back to back and on the road. That seems like a tough ask.
I mean, the problem is you look at the team and you're like, okay, who are the best players on this team? And it's like almost entirely UNC Pleiades players. There's a couple recent grads, mostly. But otherwise, there's just not, as you get down the roster, that it falls off fast. So I think that's going to be the challenge for them. Is like, can you compete over the course of the game? And then, it's hard to go back-to-back games, especially when, tired legs after that. It's going to be tough to beat DC. So, yeah, it should be fun. Keith, you want to make your picks?
Yeah, I'm taking DC and New York to get back to the finals. And I don't like this. I don't like to split my tickets here, but I think I got to take DC. They're at home, and you mentioned that New York played their best game against DC. I also think DC played their worst game against New York. It is not going to be like that again. I'm not going to measure 2 teams by when they're playing at such opposites. I don't expect to see that type of game again. I still think it'll be close because New York's simply that good. But I think I have to favor DC because I see the teams as pretty evenly matched, and then you get DC with the home field advantage and a chance to prepare a little bit more for what New York's bringing.
New York definitely has a chance to do the funniest thing ever. Just to be clear.
Yes.
I've got DC and New York to the finals as well. I think New York beats Minnesota by 2. I think DC beats Raleigh by 3. And in the final, man, it's a tough call. It's a really tough call. I wish I could see the rosters. If I could see the rosters and I knew exactly who was playing, I feel like I'd be able to make a little bit of a stronger prediction here. But I'm gonna take the home team. I think we've seen this season that the road grind is tough. I think DC has been the best team this season. I think they're going to show us that the New York game was a bit of an aberration. I think it's in some ways it's a blessing in disguise to lose that game because you have something to adjust a little bit more easily. So give me DC.
You son of a... I thought for sure you were going to take New York. I thought I was getting in with this nice differentiating take, and you come in with the same take. Oh, God, we've been doing the show for too long, man. We're doing it together for too long. I'm coming off of picking a perfect women's bracket at college nationals, so I don't need to worry about who likes my picks and who doesn't like my picks. Well, just like then you've picked chalk, which seems to be a winning strategy.
I guess I think New York almost feels like the chalk pick. It's close. It's really close. I think it's going to be a close game. It's like a pick 'em.
If you're a Philly Surge fan or player or the PATA,
you want
director.
New York to lose in the most heartbreaking way possible.
Okay, that's what you answer. You do exactly. What
definitely don't want them to win.
Okay.
No way do you want them to win. That makes you sick if they win. All right, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, we're gonna check in on the AUDL, and then we're gonna get to our high school national invite preview, as we are just 3 days away from the tournament. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Deep Look. AUDL season is at the midway point, Keith. And let's take a look at where things stand right now. We've had some really good games the last couple of weeks. Currently in the standings, I'll go division by division. Your playoff teams in these orders. In the South Division, Atlanta Hustle sitting at 5-2 atop the South. Carolina Flyers and the Austin Soul are at 6-3 and 5-3 respectively in the other 2 playoff spots. Certainly those 3 teams going to head to the playoffs. It's just a question of what order and who will get home field advantage. In the West, Salt Lake Shred coming off of a win over the Colorado Summit over the weekend, handing Colorado their first loss. Salt Lake 7-0 at the top of the West, Colorado 5-1, and then LA currently in the 3 spot at 4-3, tied with the Oakland Spiders. In the East, New York Empire 7-0. They have just been absolutely rolling. They pretty easily dispatched a very good Atlanta Hustle team this weekend. Boston Glory in the 2 spot at 4-2, and the DC Breeze at 3-2 in the 3 spot. In the Central Division, Minnesota Windchill are 5-1 atop that division. Indy is 4-2, and Pittsburgh is 3-3. So that's where state of the league is. If it all ended today, Keith, what have you been watching lately and thinking about the league?
Oh well, Empire really good. It's like they're so good. It's like exciting and boring. I mean, Jeff Babbitt's pretty awesome, and Ryan Oscar, but not drawing my attention right now. To me, we got to be talking about Salt Lake. Get the big win over Colorado. They've looked awesome this season. Will Selfridge back from injury. The kid is flying around. They have all these young guys who are making huge plays for them. They have a couple vets who they also can rely on. But man, Salt Lake looks very impressive. Like, I certainly am not gonna take them over New York, but like, am I starting to wonder, are they like as good or better than the Hustle, like the DC? I don't know. They look very, very good.
Yeah, they really have. And it's one thing to be beating some of these bottom feeders in the West, but to go into Colorado and beat them, very impressive. And the thing is, it's really fun. They play Colorado again this weekend in Salt Lake. By the way, HSNI teams, players get in for $5 if they wear their jersey. So you can head out to the game after pool play on Friday. Jordan Kerr is killing it. Selfridge, puts up 4 assists, 2 goals and a block. Chad Jorgensen has been awesome. I mean, like, they're getting contributions all the way down the roster too. They had let's count it, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 guys in positive plus minus.
I thought you were going to say Jorgensen's. I thought you were just counting the number of Jorgensen's on the roster.
I actually can't count them. There's too many. But yeah, I've been really impressed. And I generally, Keith, I'm pretty skeptical of these West Division teams. I'm skeptical because they come to championship weekend and they routinely get crushed. Is this Salt Lake team, or I guess I should say whichever team emerges, going to be battle tested enough to actually hang with the likes of a New York or Raleigh or Atlanta?
I kind of think so. I think this might be the year that winning the West feels like it could prepare you to go out and play against the other teams that you're going to see at championship weekend. I mean, it's not the same as I guess going through the Empire or whatnot, but like Boston and Philly, like those are what the 3rd and 4th best teams in the East. Like Austin hasn't been that impressive. Why are those teams that much better than playing against LA and Oakland? I'm not sure that I buy they are. And I think Colorado is certainly in the class with the tier 2 teams in divisions right now. So like, I don't know if on a neutral site, I quite am at the point of saying I would take Salt Lake to beat DC, but it feels close to a pick 'em to me right now. And, if we were in that situation and somehow like you can't really get in that situation where you have Salt Lake versus DC to play New York for the title. But if you could, like, if only, then, I would be comfortable backing Salt Lake in that situation. I wouldn't be confident, but I would not be opposed. They have the tools. Like, the defense looks for real. That's always been the knock on the West is it's the Wild Wild West, and just the defense is optional, but it doesn't feel that way quite this year.
I think the AUDL should start a new playoff system where the winner of each division gets into the playoffs, and then a ranking committee decides the other playoff teams, irrespective of division, Keith.
Or they could just put the Surge in. Like, the Surge need a playoff spot. Just bring them over.
Okay. Surge versus Mechanics.
I mean, look, you got Philly. Philly does have their own representative in the league. I hate to bring up the ringer, I guess, but they did this funny thing where they've divided the hot birds into the hot birds and the cold birds on their power rankings. every week, which I found quite amusing. But yeah, they've got some wins together. Boston looks strong this year? We finally are seeing Boston come together in a way that we haven't. Do you think that these teams are a threat in the East? Can they DC?
Stop about threat in the East. Boston. What has Boston done? Boston beat a Philly team that had a massive lead against them because Philly completely melted down. Otherwise, they've done literally nothing. They got smoked by Atlanta this weekend. And yeah, sure, they've beaten Montreal, but they beat Toronto. Well, that doesn't do anything for me. They're about to come to New York and get blasted this weekend. I don't think this Boston team is legit at all. I think that they had an early, easy schedule, and we're going to see them very much come back to earth. They're not a terrible team, but they don't have the offense to compete with these top teams, and they continue to have problems with availability of players, buy into the team. It's plagued this franchise. So no, I do not think they're a real threat. In fact, I think Philly is the third best team in the East.
I'll tell you what, me and my 2022 DraftKings balance both learned about picking Philly. I'm not doing it. I've been hurt. I've been hurt before. I'm not doing it. They're pretenders until proven otherwise. It's turning out to be a very interesting playoff race. Now, some of the top teams already feel like they've been decided. Like New York, it's done. Unless they go New York's won. I'm sorry.
By the way, Keith, you didn't mention this, but New York is going to play at Colorado and Salt Lake on a back-to-back, and that gives us an awesome opportunity to see how they stack up. And that's a harsh environment for New York. They got to go to altitude.
They could lose a game there, and they're still massive favorites to win the title.
No, I think so too. I think what was really impressive is that they went out against Atlanta this weekend, a team that felt like, hey, we want to force New York out. We think that we can get them to throw it away, and we have all these awesome athletes to match up with New York, and they kind of got bullied, Keith. Like Babbitt went out there and kind of killed him. Ryan Eisgar was an assassin, had, I think, 8 assists. And the New York offense didn't turn it over in the first half. It was clinical. And it's not like Atlanta played a terrible game. Maybe they didn't play their absolute best game, but they played solid. They got some breaks in the second half. But New York was just overwhelming. Like their defense continues to look like the best in the league. And they just kept taking it away from Atlanta and putting it in the end zone, whether or not they called the timeout.
Babbitt's going to get the MVP. So I mean, you can. I think you can also box that up too. I mean, he's been on one. Everybody's been talking about the flexing on Kabira, his former teammate. It's pretty amusing. Let's see when you got Jeff Babbitt getting up to the goofy antics on the field, it's not.
Well, is that the one where he skied for the hammer on the sideline and then started going to the end zone while rocking the flex and then caught the goal?
Rolled up his sleeve and
truly amazing.
Which is like a summer. I would expect to see that move in college nationals pool play, but here's Babbitt. And he had an absolute roofing during that game too. I mean, he went up for a huge catch. Guys springy due to that size.
Okay,
here's a quick. I got a question for you. I'm going to beat you to your quick question.
Okay.
Who do you like more, the Hustle or Carolina?
Listen, I think Atlanta is the better team from a talent perspective. That may sound like a crazy thing to say, but I think on an AUDL field with the athletes they have, the throwers they have, I think they have all the tools. Whether they have the mentality to beat a Carolina team that's been there and done that and also suffered the pain in the past and learned from it, that I do not know. But I honestly think I like Atlanta on paper a little bit more than I like Carolina. And it's going to come down, in my mind, it's going to come down to who gets home field. Who wins division. Atlanta controls their own destiny.
Very, very astute. I agree with most of that analysis. I mean, Brett Holzmeier, Justin Burnett, they've both been having great seasons. Christian Olsen has been really good for Atlanta. I mean, it's easy to talk yourself back into Carolina when you really sit down and look at the roster. I don't know if some of the losses maybe have been a differentiator for them, or they've been, we saw them with the early season weirdness with the rotations. Like, have they been a little bit in cruise control? I don't know, but I think the talent gap between them and Atlanta is so thin that it really is going to be a lot about who controls home field, and Atlanta's done the early season work to be in the better position for that. So right now, I think I'd also take Atlanta.
I mean, from a systems perspective, you have to like Carolina, right? Like, they have guys who played together forever. If they get Eric Taylor back, that's obviously that could change the complexion of the series. But Gucho Hannes and Yannick and the way that Joe White has been playing, I mean, it's not like it's close. It's close from a talent perspective. I think there's probably some people who would argue that Carolina has more talent, but I just think that Atlanta's continued to get better and better, and I really like what we've seen from them. And I feel like we've been seeing players leveling up a little bit. But the thing is, the last time they faced off, Carolina whooped on Atlanta. Atlanta looked undisciplined. Carolina was very disciplined, didn't turn it over. They're going to have to play smarter than that. And they were a little loose with the disc against New York too, their offense.
What do you think? What do you think about the Central? I know we've talked a lot about the drama because it's hard to pick, but just real quick. I mean, right about Minnesota in first. You got the Alley Cats on a 4-game winning streak. Chicago's below Pittsburgh right now. What's your take on the Central?
Well, I think there's a lot of parity, but this is not a strong division. Like, no. Besides Detroit, everyone's decent. Madison at 1-4, it's like the best 1-4 team in the league for sure. But, are you really convinced by Minnesota? I mean, I'm sure the league is already like trying to put the fix in for the wind chill to get into the playoffs and win that spot out of the Centrals because they're hosting. But, I do think they're the best team. In fact, it may not end up being that close in the playoffs. I think that they are the most talented team, but no, I'm not sold on. I think it's whoever gets into the championship weekend is going to lose in the first round.
Charlie, Milwaukee is actually the worst 1-4 team or Madison, excuse me. It's the worst 1-4 team in the league because they're the only 1-4 team in the league.
Okay, the best 1-win team in the league. Let's go with that. Speaking of,
yeah, that tracks. They are indeed better than Seattle.
Let's talk about the defeateds, the fully defeateds. The Mechanics, of course, have still not won. They looked like they were maybe like in it with Pittsburgh this weekend, and then no. Montreal is 0-5. Portland is 0-6. Dallas is 0-5. Which of these teams is the most embarrassing?
Okay. The answer is clearly Portland, right? Like,
and the answer is not Detroit. Close. The answer is Portland. This team is a joke, Keith. Look at these results. They just lost this weekend in Portland to the LA Aviators, 29-11. What is that?
Not good.
They were down 8-1 at the end of the first quarter and 14-4 at halftime. What are we doing here?
There was that brief moment in the beginning of their debut season in which that team was hype. And it's been all downhill from there.
My God. You can't even win at home?
Who do they send to this game? 29-11 is really bad.
There is a home. You say, who do they send? It was a home game.
Oh, no.
They lost in Portland, Keith.
Were they getting booed? Yeah, like if you were playing at a professional sports arena, like the home fans might boo you. Probably not an ultimate, though.
I don't think people are that mean, but they deserved it. They were 88% on their completions. That is so bad. They only had 2 break chances in the game. 2.
I think the reason it's frustrating is because you look at Portland's roster and like you see why you feel like they should be a better team than this. Like Detroit, like, yeah, I would take Portland to beat Detroit if they played each other, but it's just a different level of expectation, I'd say, between the two teams.
Exactly.
So shout out to Montreal, because I'm almost positive I remember one of their players commenting it's something to the effect of like being motivated by us picking them to do really poorly, and now they're 0-5. So,
well, hey, I mean, somebody's got to be the worst team, and the East is a very competitive division, so that's tough. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. This Portland roster, it's not amazing, but it's not winless. They have plenty of good players, but availability's been a big issue. Buy-in's been a big issue, same as you see with teams like Boston. And yeah, I don't know. There needs to be a major change in Portland, because it's a disaster right now. And then you think about Rhino and the roster they just came out with, and like they feel like a championship contender in the club division. And we're going to talk about club rosters and club season stuff in our subscriber bonus segment out the back. We got a lot of rosters coming in, and we start to talk about, okay, what's the preseason vibes for the club season, as we're just a couple weeks away from competitive tournaments getting started. Any other thoughts on the AUDL, Keith?
No, I think we covered it all. I still miss Bet's perspective, but
I know.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of the good stuff in.
I know. Hopefully someday the betting comes back. It certainly makes it a lot of fun. So that's where things stand at AUDL. Make sure to check out our column every week, Buzzer Beater, written by Alex Rubin, for the latest on the league. Okay, time for some high school national invite talk. 32 teams based on the Ultiworld High School Power Rankings getting invited to Salt Lake City for the 2-day tournament to cap off the high school season. It's always so much fun. For the first time, it's going to be held on the West Coast. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say the West Coast, the Western United States.
Yeah, I told you. I think I told you this off air, but I don't understand why we talk West Coast, East Coast. It could just be West and East.
It's true. I mean, as somebody who grew up in the Mountain West, if somebody was like, "Oh, you live on the West Coast," I'd be like, "Nah, not really." But on the other hand, now that I live in New York, I say that and I'm like, "Yeah, like the West over there." But anyway, Salt Lake City, beautiful this time of year. Weather forecast looks great. The most competitive high school national invite we've ever had. This is iteration number 5, and all but one team are ranked in the top 25 right now. There are more top 10 teams than we've ever had at the tournament. It is going to be stacked, and some of the most exciting talent up and coming towards the college division are going to be competing. Few players that we saw last year, Keith, kind of emerge at HSNI back this year for their teams. So let's quickly take a look at the top seeded teams and where things stand. Number 1 overall seed in the girls division is Roosevelt, and they have been phenomenal this year. They've lost. They did lose a game. They lost to Lincoln, the number 2 team in the rankings and in the seedings. But it was a league game, and then they immediately bounced back and beat Lincoln pretty squarely in the Washington State finals. Those two teams for sure the favorites. South Eugene, the defending champion, the 3 seed, definitely not going to be a pushover. So Keith, what are you looking for in the girls division?
Well, I think that Seattle matchup is going to headline in the girls division should it come to pass. Obviously there's a lot of Northwest teams at the top of the rankings. That's no surprise. But there's just so many big name players, I feel like, between Roosevelt and Lincoln. Part of that's because of the way that they played last year, but we could be talking about some of the best players at the tournament. Or when you're looking at Ella Monahan and Ella Widmeyer from Lincoln, and then on the other side, I think somehow I could say this, but you kind of know the names on Roosevelt, crazy as it is to say. Shigal Gelfand, the Hakimis are both back. I mean, these teams have a ton of talent, and given that they've had the chance to play against each other, as well as some of the other top teams, I mean, I just think that they're going to be in the best position to be the strongest at the tournament.
I'm pretty excited to see how some of the non-West Coast teams do, or non-West teams. Sorry, Keith. Lower Marion, Pennsylvania champs coming into the 7th seed. Green Canyon, the Utah team. How about Four Rivers and Newton North from up in Massachusetts, and Edina from Minnesota, although they did not win the Minnesota State Championship. Surprisingly, they've been the dominant team in Minnesota for a long, long time. They earned an invite by winning the Niqua knockout, but then they did not win the Minnesota State title. So the quality of competition continuing to rise in Minnesota. Summit out of Oregon, Lone Peak, Madison coming from Virginia, the Virginia State champs. So a lot of interesting teams, and the top 6 teams, 5 of them are from Washington and then South Eugene. So that's your top 6 seeds. Can any of those other teams make a push to semis, or show that they can hang with these top Washington teams that are just so good?
I do think you're probably going to see some inconsistency once you get down the line. I do think that we could see some of these teams pop up. Edina, they have the foible in at states, yes, but they also have Amelia Zedelek, who is probably going to be one of the best players of the tournament. Could certainly be a big difference maker for them. You look at like Lone Peak. I think they lost some of their key contributors from last year, but they always have a way of developing new players who've already played the game and have been around the game, and then just bring in tremendous athletes. So I think that they're a team that could definitely outperform their seed as well.
Over on the boys' side, top seed is Eastside Prep. They are the Washington State champs, and they have been very good. They beat Cleveland in the final of the Seattle Invite back in the fall. Then they, of course, won the Washington State title. Just have not done much losing. That's for sure. Number 2 seed, Nathan Hale. Technically, I think you might argue that they're not the second favorite. Some of the seeding was designed to avoid regional rematches and things like this. The next highest team in the actual power rankings is South Eugene. But, South Eugene, quarterfinalist at the 2022 HSNI. They've had a good year. They won Spaghetti Westerns. They were very competitive at Seattle Invite, but they did not necessarily, look like they're a dominant force. It feels more open this year on the boys' side than it has in the past. Lone Peak is in the field, the defending champs, but they are not the team they once were. They're coming in as the 7 seed. I'm pretty curious to see what we see from Cleveland, Keith. They were missing their best player due to an injury back in the fall. He's back. How good could they be? They're in the same pool as Eastside Prep. That should be a fun rematch.
It should. I mean, Eastside certainly, I think, has earned their spot as the favorite. Axel Olsen, the junior handler, is phenomenal. Be a lot of fun to watch. But there are plenty of names worth knowing across these rosters, and I would be very surprised if, for example, the top 4 make semis. I think the field is too deep for that. And I'm a little bit curious about what we're going to see from some of the teams down the line that are also from out east. How far can Tobias Brooks take this Jordan team? They are very like junior and sophomore heavy, like not a lot of seniors, but Brooks is obviously a superstar. I think most people would peg him as the top player going into this tournament. But what can the rest of the team bring? How well can they prepare? What did they learn from last year? They do have a couple other vets who I think are going to be playmakers for them, but Brooks obviously can be somebody who could spark something run for that team. And then maybe it's the Paideia in me, but I can't help but be curious about Amherst. Seated pretty low, but they have some players who have club experience with teams like Sprout or Tire Biz. Like, I think that Amherst at 15, I'm going to say that I'm picking them to break seat. Like, I know that's not much when you're 15, but they're a team that feels like they could outperform being one of the weakest teams in the tournament.
Some really fun stories. Jordan, North Carolina champs. How about Montclair? Coming into the year, I didn't even know the name. But they come out, they play great during the regular season, and then they beat Columbia to win the New Jersey State title. They come in as the 10 seed. That whole pool, South Eugene, Northwest, Montclair, Amherst, going to be a lot of fun.
Proof that you can win your way in. People, if you think that it's just like, oh, brand name, just take the same teams every year or whatever. If you win the games, Charlie will notice.
We certainly do our best to find the teams that, perform the best during the year. It's not an easy process, but I don't think we miss on any of the big obvious teams. Montclair, yeah, player led, like no coach. Crazy. Like they've built their team from in the last 5 or 6 years from 0 to NJ champs. Edina, Minnesota State champs. Summit coming in very close to South Eugene. Many close games. Beat them once this year. They're the number 2 team out of Oregon. Jackson Reed, the DC champs. Columbia's New Jersey State runner-ups. And then, you mentioned Amherst. Pennsbury rounds out the whole thing. They actually ended up falling early at the Pennsylvania State Championships. They lost to Lower Marion in a surprise loss. They did have an excellent regular season, but they are the one team that is currently not ranked in the top 25. They're just outside that threshold right now. Maybe they can bring a little better game to HSNI.
They're another pretty intriguing team. So I'm looking forward. I mean, to me, they're I know for the teams, this is really a meaningful opportunity to compete with the best of the best and show everybody what your program has done. And you could see last year how meaningful it was for the teams that not only won, but even the teams that just made to the finals. Like for them, it felt like such an accomplishment. And I'm still though looking forward to getting to know these players like that. Seeing the kids, they have so much fun, and seeing the talent that they bring to the table just feels like it's higher and higher level every year. So I'm very much looking forward to getting to know some of these players and being able to keep an eye on them as they develop throughout their careers.
All right, Keith, do you want to make some predictions? As hard as it is,
how deep do we want to pick?
I think just let's go semis, finals winner. That's
tough.
It's tough.
Semis.
It's definitely tough.
All right. Yeah, semis. All right. I'm going to take in the girls division. Oh my gosh. Do I go with an all Northwest semis? Like Roosevelt, Lincoln, South Eugene, Cleveland?
Going Cleveland over Hale, huh?
Yeah. How about that? How about that? Let's start with that. And yeah, I'm still going to go with Roosevelt and Lincoln in the final with Roosevelt as the winner.
All right. I'm going to go. I got to make sure this is possible. So hang on a second. I got to think about the matchups here. 2B. Oh, that's so tough. Have to win the pool. Otherwise, they're just cooked. I really want to take Lower Marion. I've been impressed with their results this season to make semis, but I don't see them beating Lincoln. And if they finish second in their pool, then they cross over against Roosevelt. And that's just not good. So I'm taking Roosevelt. I'm taking Lincoln. I'm taking South Eugene. Oh, man. Who's my last team? Give me Green Canyon, Keith.
I like it.
Can it happen? 2A, 1B. I don't know if it can happen. They'd have to finish third in their pool, I guess. And I'm not really sure that I see that happening.
Yeah, that doesn't feel as realistic. I was excited about the concept, though.
I want to talk myself into it, but I feel like I wonder if we're going to see some strategic.
No, you're not. You're not.
Probably not. I'm going to take Hale then. I'm going to take the top 4 seeds. I'm going to take Hale.
Look,
and I'm taking Roosevelt and Lincoln in the final.
This in the PUL. Come on.
I know.
It works for
I don't know.
It works for you.
They're really good. Right? They're the top 4 seeds for a reason. I think that given a couple, like I said, I like Lower Marion. I like Green Canyon at the 7 and the 8 seed, but I think it's a disadvantageous place to be in the pools.
Yeah.
So I'm taking Roosevelt to win it all, Keith.
Okay.
They've been that team.
We're in the same boat there.
Boys division, here we go. I'm going to go with Eastside Prep, Cleveland, Northwest, and Green Canyon. No. Give me Jordan.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if I like Green Canyon more than I like Jordan. Yeah, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go Jordan, Northwest, Hale, or Cleveland, and Eastside Prep. So that's the 1, the 8, the 3, the 6, and the 9.
Man, finishing second in Pool B is just brutal. I kind of want to take both Hale and Lone Peak.
Wow.
But you just can't. You can't get the 2B team. It just doesn't work that way.
We're literally picking completely different teams.
I'm taking Eastside. That's for sure. I like Eastside. I like Hale. And then I think I want to take. What happens if you finish 2D? Yeah, okay. I'm going to take both of the teams you're talking. So I'm going to take Eastside, Hale, Green Canyon, and Jordan.
Okay.
Maybe what's the picture for Amherst, Montclair? No. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm going with.
I'm taking to the finals. I'm taking Eastside Prep to beat Jordan. And I'm taking Cleveland to beat Northwest. So I've got Eastside Prep taking on Cleveland again after beating in pool play in the final.
I'm taking the top 2 seeds again. I'm going Eastside and Hale.
Okay. Who you got winning it all?
Give me Hale. Let's go Hale.
I got to take Eastside Prep. They've been so good this season. There it is. There's our picks for the HSNI. I can't wait to see how wrong we are.
Oh, there's no chance. There's zero chance that we got either of us got all 8 of those right.
A lot of West Coast teams in our picks. We'll see if that's how it all works out in the end.
I mean, it's I feel like that's been pretty well supported over the years, especially in the girls division.
Definitely has. So you can follow along with all the action at ultiworld.com/live. We're going to be streaming 2 games per round throughout the tournament. And there will also be bonus free live coverage available on the HSNI YouTube channel. We're going to have an Apollo streams set up at all of the non-showcase fields. And so if somebody, a parent or an injured player or somebody is willing to step up and stream the game, it will be available on the HSNI YouTube channel, which means that every single pool play and bracket play game could be streamed if people step up and do the streams. But the Ulti-World coverage of the semis and finals and the select pool play and early bracket games will be available at ultiworld.com/live with a subscription, full or plus, or the event pack. And so we hope you tune in for all the action. Keith, it's always a lot of fun. It really is.
It's great. I'm smiling. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be a nice palate cleanser as we transition from college to club.
All right, so that is going to do it for this edition of Deep Look. Thank you so much for tuning in. Our Out the Back segment this week, we'll be taking a look at the club rosters that have started to pop up and start to do some early projections and some early power rankings for the club division. For Keith Rayner, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.